In 12 days, I leave for a 1,200-mile pilgrimage over the course of 12 weeks. And this is my itinerary. This is called the Via Francigena. It's a backpacking trail through the middle of Europe, usually starting in Canterbury, England, and ending in the eternal city of Rome, Italy. Now, it began because in the year 990 AD, an archbishop from England named Sigeric went down to Rome to receive his pallium. And on his way back, he documented his journey of his 80 stops between Rome and his hometown of Canterbury, England, in his journal. And now, 1,000 years later, especially with the popularity of the Camino de Santiago in one of the neighboring countries of Spain, it is becoming a more and more well-traversed trail, being better infrastructured, more documentation, and a general push as the almost next step of the Camino. And I think that context is important because not only is the Camino in the grand scheme of things almost like the classic, most original, and most popular route to backpack in Europe, but it was also my first backpacking route. And so I get to use the information that I learned over 3 years ago backpacking Spain in this newest adventure that I plan on going on. Now, they do differ, not only in logistics, but also in spirit. The Camino was about 600 miles or about 1,000 kilometers over the course of 35 days. I walked 15, 16, 17 miles, got to the next hostel, ate my face off, and went to prepare for the very next day, and did it all over again 34 days in a row. At the end of the day, it was just a really friendly trail to get up and walk however many miles and not have to worry about anything in particular going wrong. Not to say the Via Francigena is rocket science or more risky, but whenever you're walking for this long, which is about double the length of the Camino de Santiago, you might need to plan things out a little bit more precisely, especially because the infrastructure might not be there as much as it was in somewhere like Spain. And also just in the spirit of the Via Francigena. Sigeric documented all of his stops, and that's given me a lot of inspiration when it comes to doing what I love, and it has almost just helped me align my purpose with the actual walking of this pilgrimage. So shout out to Sigeric in 990, setting the tone for the whole walk. Big shout out. Big shout out to Sigeric. How do you plan out an 80-plus day walk over the course of 12 weeks, over the course of all these different type of environments, from the French countryside to the Swiss Alps, to the hot middle of August Tuscany region? And what was my inspiration behind dividing it all up like this, and what do I hope to discover, to document, and to experience when I am out on this trail? Over the course of those 12 weeks, if I were to do the math in my head of how many miles it is per week, it is about 100 miles per week, which lands me at about 15 miles per day. Now, it also works out really well that I was like, if I take a Sunday rest day in a city that is culturally significant, that has plenty of accommodation, and somewhere where I think I would generally enjoy spending an extra 24 hours to rest and recover, I would just pick those points that are more or less 80 to 120 miles apart. And those could be my rest day cities, almost like these checkpoints along the way of the 1,200 miles. Which then brings me to this, my itinerary. Of course, I start in Calais, make my way to Arras, to Reims, Langres, Pontarlier, Grand Saint Bernard, Vercelli, Fidenza, Pontremoli, Lucca, Siena, Viterbo, and then ending in Rome. Now, week 1 is going to be more of a travel week where I get to explore the northern part of France, go to Normandy, see some things that my grandfather had always wanted to see, and that I'll be able to share with him when I return home in late September. So week 2 is the official start of my walk. And then between that Monday and Saturday, I go from Calais to Arras, which is about 11 miles per day. I wanted to start off a little bit slower and get into a groove of walking, unpacking, sleeping, repacking, and doing it all over again for a few days in a row. During my second week of walking, Arras to Reims. Reims is the coronation city, which is where they used to crown the kings of France, and the Joan of Arc was here. Kind of a cool thing. During my third week of walking from Reims to Langres, 19 miles per day, really picking up the mileage and looking forward to seeing some of those Roman cities and being in the birthplace of Diderot, somewhere in between those two pronunciations, who I believe was the author of one of the Enlightenment encyclopedias. Super cool. My fourth week of walking, I go from Langres to Pontarlier, which is going to be another 18 miles per day. Now this is in like the back roads, the countryside of France. And Pontarlier is the very last town in France before I begin going into the Swiss Alps. It's also the absinthe capital of the world, which I mean, that's super cool. I look forward to spending a Saturday night in the absinthe capital of the world on the foothills of the Swiss Alps. Fifth week of walking, this will be a tough one. Uphill, Pontarlier to Grand St. Bernard, 15 miles per day, dialing it back just a bit because it will be more vertical, where I arrive in Switzerland and I begin crossing the Alps. Week 7, Grand St. Bernard to Vercelli. Now this is going to be a bit more of a downhill walk into Italy, so I am planning on 20 miles per day. Afterwards, it flattens out from Vercelli to Fidenza, where now I'm really going to have to push it. I think whether you're doing a marathon, any type of physical challenge, you know when you're 3/4 of the way through that this is usually the hardest part, and I think I'm just going to embrace this. It's going to be a long, flat 20 miles per day, and at this point, my legs will just be machines ready to take on those miles. My 8th week of walking, I will be going from Fidenza to Pontremoli, which is now 14 miles per day, and going to be experiencing a bit more of the elevation, going through the Apennines. Afterwards, I begin to cool down a bit in my 9th week of walking, Pontremoli to Lucca. I hear beautiful things about Lucca. 13 miles per day. It's a very popular city with some intact Renaissance walls. 10th week of walking, Lucca to Siena. 14 miles per day should be pretty normal at that point. If anything, it should feel kind of nice to only do 14 miles per day. Next, 11th week of walking, from Siena to Viterbo. A tough 18 miles per day, but I am hoping with the Roman influence and all of those feelings within reach that it will now just feel like I am floating during this portion of my walk. And then finally, week 12 of my walking, Viterbo to Rome, 12 miles per day. I can soak it all in and end in St. Peter's Square. So if you'd like, make sure and follow along. Thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, let me know. Am I absolutely crazy? Am I out of my mind? Am I over my head? What should my feet expect? Is there anything that I'm missing on this itinerary, or something that I should really try and see while I am on the roads of France, Switzerland, and Italy? And other than that, my friends, thank you so much for watching, listening, and coming along with me on this journey through France, Switzerland, and Italy on the Via Francigena. I'll talk to you soon.